This is Joyce Ross. She's going to talk about board development. She's a founding partner of Ross Partners. She's an which is an international management consulting firm. She's currently retired to donate her time to nonprofit organizations. She has experience in organizational development, human resources, executive leadership, and she's served on many prestigious boards in San Diego. I know she's been on Planned Parenthood. She's served on small boards, medium boards, and very large boards, so she really has run the gamut. She's on our board, and she helps us with board development as well. So please help me welcome Joyce Ross.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you all hear me in the back? Okay, great. Okay, so why pay attention to board development? Yeah, right. I know. Why not pay attention, huh? Okay. You know, what we all know is the stronger the board, the stronger the organization. And, you know, it's interesting, though. You can have a weak board and still do okay if you have a great executive director and a strong staff. But if you really want to cope with the challenges that you have today, as well as grow into the future, then one of the best places to start is to build a highly effective board. And that's my goal today, is to give you some characteristics of what does a high-performing board look like, and what are some techniques and approaches you can use to build your board in that area. Okay? Specifically, the objectives are to increase your skills and knowledge of board development, plus become a more effective board member and change agent. And I have change agent there for a reason, because an executive director can be a change agent in working with his or her board, and individual board members can be. You're getting handouts. I have more than enough for everybody. So for those in the back row, you can relax, okay? All right, okay. So in order to look at board development, we're going to start with a survey. Whoops, I'm going so fast. You can tell I'm just clicking away. Okay. We're going to start with a survey. Now, what we're going to do is have you think about a board that you're on, or a board that you used to be on, or a board that you work with. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to think about a board that you've either worked with or you're currently on. And I'd like you to rate that board. These are, the McKinsey & Company did a survey to see what were the key enablers of great boards in terms of high performance? And there's 10 of them. And what you're going to do right now is to check whether you disagree with the statement as it applies to the board you're thinking about, whether you somewhat agree, or whether you strongly agree. Okay? Good. Let me give you a minute to do that. Typically, if I had a smaller group and much more time, we'd go over each item on this survey and said, okay, let's raise hands and see where everyone came out. But I'm going to choose 2 items on this survey that typically are the ones that get the strongest rating about disagree, okay, meaning it doesn't apply to this organization. So I'm going to ask you, we're going to do a group tally in just 2 items. Number 8, effective leader selection. Somebody read number 8 out, because I gave mine away. What's number 8 say?
The board has an effective process for selecting, developing, and transitioning new leaders.
Thank you. How many of you said disagree on number 8? Gotcha. Okay. How many of you said somewhat agree on number 8? Okay. Typically, number 8 is the one that comes out as one of the major areas for development. Okay. What do you think my other one's going to be that I'm going to ask you about? 9. Absolutely. Okay. Did anyone say agree on number 9? Could you stand up and we'll clap? San Diego Public Library Foundation. All righty, good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over each of these effectiveness indicators and talk about each one. If you have some questions, raise your hands if you have something to share. I'm going to have to monitor time. I may have to say, okay, that's, you know, we can take one question, but we need to move on. So we'll all work together on that, okay? All right, number 1, board clearly understands its roles and responsibilities. And I tied something on that, didn't I? I said, and acts upon them. You've met a lot of people that understand what they're supposed to do, right? Absolutely, okay. And you know, there's 2 parts to this question. One of it is that when this doesn't happen, typically what I see is there's two elements. One is the board is either unable to do it or they're unwilling, okay? Now, let's, unwilling, that's a little tougher. We're going to set that aside for a minute. But unable means, number one, they either don't know what they're supposed to do. How many of you had somebody say, gee, I didn't know that was a board responsibility? So one is they're unable to carry it out because they don't know what it is. Okay. The second thing is, under unable, they may know what it is, but they don't know how to do it. You listened to Joanne, right? Half the boards I know, half the people on the boards don't know how to read a balance sheet or read the financial statements. We ask them to be fiscally responsible. They don't know what those numbers mean. So already you've got areas that you can target. Do they know what they're supposed to do, and do they know how to do it? All right. Now, one of the ways to begin to look at that is if everyone has those that are written down and reviewed yearly. Now, if you turn to page 2 in your handout, your board development materials, I have a sample. And by the way, this handout and board development materials are just samples that we've used with other agencies. I have a sample list of typical board responsibilities. And one of the things that I recommend you do is once a year, board chair, ED, whatever, sit down with your board and say, let's go over our roles and responsibilities for this year. Okay? How did we do on them? Are there any that we need to improve? How are we doing? And are there any we need to do better? And it's a great opportunity for people to say, well, here's a board responsibility that I kind of knew we had, but boy, I didn't know how to do it. And each year when you do this, it can raise just a lot of good issues that you can work at. Okay? Now, we get to the unwilling. Okay? The board chair reinforces the roles and responsibilities through personal leadership and individual conversation. We all know how critical the board chair position can be, and the challenge of, we'll talk about recruiting, developing, the whole thing. And it's usually the board chair that gets stuck with the unwilling. All right? Okay, so part of dealing with the unwilling is to find out what's going on that this person is not showing up for board meetings, is really then unwilling to carry out. So it is a conversation that needs to happen. And the reason I'm pushing that conversation that needs to happen is if you don't have that conversation, what do you think happens if you end up having 4 or 5 unwillings sitting on your board? Yeah, that's right. And they poison the whole board. They poison the whole board. Okay. The ED, in terms of carrying out roles and responsibility, the ED provides the leadership to support the board governance functions. One of the ways to allow a board to perform effectively is to give it usually some administrative support in order to do its work. Otherwise, you burn out your board members. I mean, even for a really small little agency, I say have someone else take notes from the board meeting rather than people on the board, because they eventually end up feeling that's all they do. So you need to provide some administrative support to your boards as well as to your committees. Okay? All right. Any quick questions about understand roles and responsibilities? You just have to keep talking about them. You have to keep mentioning them. Okay? Good. All right. That was number 1. How many said you kind of agree or somewhat agree that your board understands your roles and responsibilities and acts on them? Yeah. Pretty much half the room. Right. Good. Okay. Let's go next. Board composition is appropriate. So do you have the